want to thank you all for so poignantly making the connections for us today and telling some of the stories that folks have experienced. But a few questions for you, and we'll start with DEEPAK and Janet, picking up on some of the themes that you both talked about of what's going on around the country and the grassroots. I think so often what we hear about on any issue, whether it's LGBT or immigration, are kind of the big picture headlines, and not always the stories of success or of challenge that are happening at the grassroots level and how people can engage at the grassroots level. So DEEPAK, first starting with you and following on your comments, and then Janet, what opportunities do you see at the grassroots level? What are some of the successes and the creative ways people are working on immigration? And given that our many movements are organized by issue, separated out from each other, what opportunities do you see for LGBT people who want to engage in the work on immigration at the grassroots level?
Yep. So I think this is an incredible time because we're in the middle of state legislative sessions all over the country. Mostly we are facing a wave of very negative bills. And so whether it's efforts to criminalize people who provide any kind of help to undocumented immigrants, turning doctors and nurses into criminals, or the kind of racial profiling laws that Janet talked about, those bills need to be defeated, and there are very concrete opportunities for LGBT organizations at the state and local level to plug into those fights, and I think in many cases they are plugged into those fights. There are a couple of cases in Maryland and Connecticut where bills to provide for in-state tuition, as it's called, allowing undocumented students to attend state and community colleges as though they are residents of those states, which in fact they are, and pay those rates, have a real chance of passage. So there is a tremendous opportunity in that regard. So I think those are the kind of concrete battles which provide a real entry point for LGBT and immigrant rights groups to come together.
Yeah, I would add a couple of points. One that we have found that was really, I think, a difficult decision for us in some respects, because anymore nobody likes to use the word boycott. But one of the things that we felt strongly about when we heard about the Arizona legislation, when it was signed into law, we felt that at the national level we needed to offer some leadership. And the tricky thing about boycotts is you got to be able to make sure you can follow through. Otherwise they don't really work, and it's not a smart political move. But we worked with a coalition of partners, and we talked to our partners in the state of Arizona, many who said that, look, it will be difficult for some of it in our community in the state, but things are so bad that yes, you should move forward and try to send a message that as long as Arizona has this kind of law in place, that we will not only use our political power, but our economic power. And when you combine your economic levers with your political levers, you can have an impact. And as it has turned out, Arizona has taken a very tough hit economically in a downturn economy that has, I think, been staggering in terms of the lack of now conventions and other major activities that they were counting on. And the thing that has made it, I think, a success is the fact that now other states are being a lot more cautious. We're seeing the business communities in other states standing up saying, we don't want that to happen in our state. So there is an opportunity now, because we took a stand in Arizona to really, and we've gotten partners in many in the LGBT community and many in the celebrities and music industry who've not done their concerts there. And it's just been, I think, an important signal to be sent for other states who are considering this. And in fact, I know Texas, as it looks at some of the folks who have been looking at promoting this kind of legislation, it's been the business community who's been saying, no, we don't want to have any part of this, and has been working to help push back. And I think, so that I think has been helpful, and I think in sending a signal that not only will there be a political price to be paid, even though it's been difficult because the environment is so tough in Arizona, but the economic actually hit on them has been significant, and it has caused folks, I think, to think twice, if not in Arizona, certainly in other states. The other example that I think is a sort of a good example of how some folks are trying to be more thoughtful is that there have been efforts among the faith-based communities, the business community, and some of the immigrant communities to come together to form compacts. So we saw this in Utah, and I believe there's another compact coming together in Indiana, where basically there have been efforts by some of the leaders in all of those types of groups where they're basically saying, we're not going to do an Arizona type of law. We may, we need to come together and send a message as leaders outside of the immigrant community or outside of the Hispanic community and tell them that we don't agree that this is the right way to go, because it's not sound politically, but it's because it's not sound economically. And so there have been some opportunities. We have a number of grassroots efforts underway through our affiliates in these states, combined in partnership with other partner organizations. Despite the fact that we've not seen a win in this area in a while, what has inspired me is that these folks are even more dedicated to fighting these issues at the local level. Where we need help is in having, again, other partners come in, other voices that aren't the ones that aren't going to be most affected by this to say this is wrong. And that's, I think, an opportunity for leaders in other communities like the LGBT community to step and say, we stand in solidarity with you all. And I believe that increasingly there's going to be more opportunities to see that happen. And for us, having that unified coalition pushing back on it, saying this isn't just wrong for immigrants, it's wrong for this state and it's wrong for our country, will be very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Tony, we've heard a lot of talk this morning about coalitions, about partnerships, about really what needs to be happening in various places across the country for folks to come together on this issue. And it's a political hot button issue in the country. Why for funders like those here at this conference who think strategically, are trying to be thoughtful in their funding, how can they be strategic and be thoughtful in their funding in this particular political environment if they're interested in supporting both LGBT progress as well as progress on immigration?
Sure. There are a couple of resources out there, and one, as I mentioned earlier, is Grantmakers Concerned with Immigrants and Refugees, which has a wealth of knowledge and experience of funders around the country who are doing and working on these issues. Additionally, the staff is tremendous, so go to gser.org, lots of information there for you to find out. Additionally, GSER works with funders for lesbian, gay, for LGBTQ, with funders for LGBTQ issues. So they do joint webinars and sessions and information that really kind of brings those two worlds together. Earlier I mentioned a funders collaborative of which Western Union is part of, but also I mentioned GIL, ARCUS, Haas Jr., but that funders collaborative also includes Carnegie, Ford, OSI foundations, right? Open Society Foundations, as they're now called, I believe, and a whole group of funders who have been working towards comprehensive immigration reform, as well as better messaging around welcoming campaigns around this country. I work for a corporate foundation, so Western Union, which its core audience or core customer base are immigrants. It's taken a hit from the anti-immigrant community, and as a business has really been one of the few that stands out there in terms of support of comprehensive immigration reform and other issues and in funding immigrant issues. So I would say for those funders, those donors in the room who have an interest in this, that it's okay to step out. If a major Fortune 500 company can do it, you can do it too. And there are lots of resources out there to help you.
Rachel, going a little bit different direction. As we know, we've had some more recent successes on some issues that are important to LGBT equality, including the recent announcement by the Obama administration that they find Section 3 of DOMA unconstitutional and will no longer defend it in court. I think a lot of people are wondering, you know, what are the different levers that move, that help move all LGBT people forward, and how does DOMA and the eventual overturn of DOMA or success in getting it off the books, how will that or will that not affect binational couples?
It's tremendously helpful for some couples. It is obviously game-changing for our whole community, even just the step that occurred last week. But going forward, as we see the impending death of DOMA, that is enormously helpful for LGBT equality in every respect, including for binational couples who are or who could be validly married. What it means in the short term, once we see the end of Section 3 of DOMA, it means that couples that live in states that do not have an anti-marriage policy, so states that don't have mini DOMAs, should be able to have their marriages recognized for immigration purposes. However, it's not a solution for all the people who live in the other 30-odd states. And until we have national applicability, it's not sufficient for binational couples. Immigration Equality has just announced that we are going to be challenging DOMA on the basis of the denial of immigration benefits. And we expect that that will contribute significantly to the end of DOMA on this basis as well as every other basis. But because it's not a solution for every couple, and because it's not a solution for LGBT individuals, it's crucial to continue to push the legislative agenda, a comprehensive package that includes LGBT people and LGBT families in every respect. Because it won't be a solution for queer teenagers who were brought here as children and are now being treated like criminals. And it won't be a solution for the LGBT PhD graduate who finished his doctorate in the US on a fully funded federal scholarship. This is somebody I talked to last week, but who is not being allowed to stay in the country because he can't. He's a structural engineer, but he can't get a job with any of the TARP-funded projects, with the stimulus-funded projects, because they have higher American provisions attached to them. So this is a guy whose PhD from an American university was funded by the federal government, and his expertise is in road construction, but he can't stay here. So that situation needs full-fledged legislation that will really address a broken system.
Thank you. Thank you. With many people in the room are not only engaged in their own philanthropy, their own giving, but they may sit on the boards of community organizations, are involved in other ways in the LGBT community. And for many of us, and I've learned from some of the best of how to talk about why immigration is an LGBT issue. What are some of the resources available for folks in the room, but also who may be watching this on video later, if they're interested in getting involved, but haven't had a lot of experience in looking at the intersections of immigration and LGBT equality?
We can start by going to our website and all of the websites here. You can become, like the people on this panel, the recipient of emails from NCLR and NCLR.
I hear a co-membership opportunity there.
But I think that if you go to Immigration Equality's website and the Immigration Equality Action Fund, our 501c4, that there are terrific resources, talking points, and opportunities to get involved at the local level, to talk to your federal legislators and increasingly state legislators, because obviously we are seeing this really terrible rash of ballot initiatives and state legislation that is going to be so damaging for the LGBT and immigrant communities. And Immigration Equality's resources are a portal to that, as well as the NCLR's affiliates around the country.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, DEEPAK and I have talked about this, and, you know, obviously we're going to very much stay focused on what are the legislative opportunities that are still there? But the reality is with the shift in the Congress and the movement of much more folks who are much more closed-minded to any opportunity for immigration reform, we've got to be looking outside of Congress for relief and for finding ways to be creative and innovative in solving this. Obviously, there are state battles. But in terms of like possible solutions, I think one of the other things, yes, we'll work with the administration, see if there could be any executive relief here. But I think we have to keep our eye on the fact that this could be a little bit longer journey, and you know, the numbers are on our side. DEEPAK made a case, you know, between the census figures for us and the immigrant and Latino communities. I mean, I think we've seen the incredible investment opportunities that the LGBT folks have, because there are folks out there who have been very successful. If we can combine forces, and I think ultimately look a little bit at the longer term in terms of voter empowerment and voter mobilization, we're going to win these policy battles at the ballot box. You all have understood that, I think, in a very important way. We need to somehow scale that up in terms of our opportunities to work with these growing populations and understand that, you know, these policy fights are going to win when we go to the ballot box. And the sooner that we can, you know, we know that that's going to happen, and we know 2050 we'll have the numbers, but the question is can't we accelerate that if we're smart and strategic and collaborative and understand that we have that opportunity? And I think for us, it's looking at, you know, who has, you know, operations and structures on the ground that are aligned and in the same, I think, path that you all have, who is in a role to make investments in the right way to make sure that that kind of mobilization and turnout can occur. And I think the more that we can think outside of just what legislation can pass, because we're going to have some real hard times right now. And even outside of how can we force, you know, necessarily the president's hand in every aspect of this. We know that asking folks to not think about enforcing every aspect of the law is going to be tough, but we think that we can make a case for it. We really need to look at that transformative change that comes I think with the electorate process. And I'm hopeful that as we come together, these kinds of convenings and build on that, that we're going to have the right kind of partnerships and be thoughtful and innovative and really see an opportunity to accelerate the change that could benefit us all.
Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I'd add one thing that seems to me that's going on is there's tremendous cultural anxiety in the country. And I think one thing that the LGBT movement has done incredibly well that we are learning from is that political change and legislative change are largely about hearts and minds, right? That it's about the connections that actual human beings make to other human beings, knowing them in their full humanity, knowing them in their fullness. I didn't finish the Glenn Beck story. You know, the tagline when I was up there was basically the little runner was born in Bangalore, India, and partnered to my partner, Harry Hanbury, in Washington, right? And think about it, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make whole groups other, right? That is the task. Our task is to make immigrants and LGBT people not other, to make they us, right? That is kind of the task. And so I totally agree with Janet that part of the work, and I think part of the creative work that can happen at the local level is that connection at a human level that we've made at a national level and that's happening in many states, but really to make it happen at a grassroots level, that's our task.
When you talk about, each one of you has I think, surfaced, and even just holding this session here has surfaced the particular intersection right now at this political moment and opportunities, and you're being very kind in saying that you learn a lot from the LGBT movement. Your grass is always greener. We always say we're learning so much from the immigrant rights movement. So, you know, we learn a lot from each other. We certainly sometimes struggle with each other. When you think ahead and think about the path that we're on, and Janet, you highlighted it might be a longer path than we had originally hoped, and you think, what mistakes are we making now, or what mistakes could we avoid, so that perhaps that path is a little bit shorter, Janet? Or some of the things that was very poignant, Andrew, when you said there are some things, Andrew Park said in the introduction, here are some things that are going to be said, and that mantra of things, and how painful some of those things are. What are some things that we can be doing now to set ourselves on a path so that the journey might be a bit shorter?
Well, I think you talked about it. I mean, I think having these kinds of opportunities helps a lot, and I agree with DEEPAK is, you know, the more we can understand and just know each other, understand each other more, our stories, our struggles, our histories, that would help a lot. You know, I do think that in the Latino community, we have a lot of work to do. You know, we saw the results of Prop 8 in California. While not as big a gap in the African American community, there's still quite a significant gap in the Latino community in terms of understanding these issues. And so I think NCLR, you know, can play a key role as we look at opportunities there, but some of these things won't happen overnight. But I think to the extent that we can show that we're working together on other fronts that our community cares about, and that I think that will build this understanding that, you know, it's really about a shared agenda at the end of the day. And a unified vision. But, you know, I think, you know, for us, there are tension points. There's no question about it. And we talked a little bit about the DREAM Act bill. You know, we were asked to, DREAM Act and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the fact that they occurred on the same day for us. Many felt like senators felt like voting for both Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the DREAM Act was a bridge too far. And so some of our folks, we were hearing from our left that it was, you know, the fault of the LGBT community and the fact that they came in on the same day. You know, there's that kind of talk that if we let that define, you know, our communities and our interests, we will all fail in our efforts to come together. We have to be responsible as leaders in our community to educate our own community about, you know, what the timelines are, what the struggles are, and how we just have to come together and stick with our goal and our vision, and that you all in many ways have been partners along the way. And so I think the more we can make sure that those efforts to create wedges, and you know, we've got, you know, it's not like, and DEEPAK knows this as much as I do, you know, we've got different factions within the Latino and immigrant communities that we're trying to manage. It's not like we're presenting a unified voice every day. We certainly try, but it's, if your experience has been like our experience, you understand, although you all look so coordinated and unified.
Yes, always.
It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, I understand, but you know, I think we understand this issue. But for us, I think it's managing our own constituencies to get them to come together and understand. At the meanwhile, you know, we're lifting as we climb, coming together with other outside groups that we know can be partners, and they're real human dynamics in all of that we all have to be cognizant of. And so I think the mistake is in when we have a moment where we're not being successful, where we've had defeat, and look at other people who've been successful, to not sort of say, oh, it's your fault, or, you know, and to understand that this is something that, you know, we all will have our opportunity, I think, to move forward and to keep trying to build those bridges.
I do want to say we're headed towards wrapping up the session. I do want to thank all of you on this panel, in particular the role of allies. And you have my commitment. I know many of our colleagues in the room in LGBT organizations and foundations that we will continue to strive to be the best allies we can. And we know that you will do the same. And I know you take a lot of hits. You take a lot of hits for standing up. And we appreciate you doing that. We will support you as you continue to stand up, and thank you. I would like to thank each of you, DEEPAK, Rachel, Janet, Tony, for sharing your stories and perspectives with us today. We do invite everyone in this room. These are the smartest people in the country when it comes to looking at some of the intersections here. Invite you to look at the resources on their websites, engage them in further conversation, and do what you can according to your values in your communities to support our work at the intersections. So thank you all very, very much.